Hey, what's up? John Sonmez from SimpleProgrammer.com. So I have a question about QA, quality assurance testing. I don't answer too many questions about that. Sometimes I do answers about QA, and like you can check out this video on, is manual testing important, or whatever I called it, and people get pissed off. But I don't think this one will piss too many people off, but it's a good question, right? So basically, I'm not going to read the whole email, but this question is from Adam, and he basically wants to know, so as a software developer, he's just getting into software development, just learning software development, and some of his friends, probably mean well, right, as experienced software developers, are telling him, oh, wait a minute, dude, you can't just get into software development. You got to learn about testing. You got to learn about QA. You need to learn all that stuff as well. So he's going through and taking some courses on Pluralsight, which, by the way, if you haven't checked out my Pluralsight courses, you can check them out right here. And if you're on a mobile, of course, the link will be below because the annotations don't work. But anyway, he's checking out Pluralsight courses on test-driven development and stuff like that. And he's just like, he's feeling overwhelmed. He's not sure whether or not to take this advice. And I think, Adam, your instincts are right on here in that you don't want to get overwhelmed here. And maybe this isn't so important. So now, before everyone gets all butthurt about this, let me just lay this out here. Quality assurance is important. Testing is important in general, and it is important for software developers to know something about it, but they don't need to have an in-depth study or deep, detailed study. When you're trying to learn software development, you need to know a little bit about everything, right? I mean, you got to have a specialty, and you want to go deep on some things, but as a well-rounded software developer, you're going to want to know a little bit about QA and testing. You're going to want to know a little bit about DevOps and how build systems work and source control, and you're going to want to know a little bit about databases and IT, operations stuff, right? You're going to want to know a little bit. But you can't learn all that. You can't be a master of everything, right? You can't do it all. That's one thing that you got to kind of figure out pretty quickly. So here's what I would suggest. Get a book on testing. There's a book that I recommend. I can't think of the name of it right now, but I'll put a placeholder here. I'll put the link. You'll see it here by the time we go through editing and this video comes out. But I'll give you the book here. It's one of the classic books, and it kind of has a good overview of all of the testing and QA. So you just get that in your head, and you understand the process. And there is one thing that I would point out that I think it's kind of important to understand, which is that test-driven development is not the same thing as quality assurance or testing. Test-driven development, if you go through the whole old school software development, waterfall methodology and requirements, it's basically an appraisal activity. So if you're learning about software development lifecycle, appraisal activity is where unit testing comes in, or test-driven development is, because you're actually, when you're doing unit testing, when you're doing test-driven development, you're not actually really testing anything. What you're doing is you're clearly defining requirements, and you're creating a very unambiguous set of requirements, because either the test passes or it fails, and you're finding that out right then. You're not writing unit tests or doing test-driven development and discovering bugs, discovering problems, right? You're preventing problems from going into the system, whereas QA, traditional QA, happens towards the end of the process. So anyway, the good news is you don't need to know everything about QA and testing. The bad news is you do need to know something about it. So do a cursory study, make sure that you understand the basic concepts, that you understand, how QA is going to test your things, some of the terminology like black box and white box testing and boundary conditions, kind of the very basics, so that you understand that and understand how defects get filed in that process, so that you can work on a team effectively, because you don't want to come into the work environment and not know anything about QA or testing and not know how to work effectively. So I think that's important, but don't get too overwhelmed. Everyone, and this is one of the things too that you're going to find, is experienced developers are they forget what it's like to be a beginner. They're going to go back and they're going to tell you, oh, you got to learn this, you got to learn that, and they're going to make you feel overwhelmed. But they mean well. It's just that they're debating the higher level things because they're beyond that point. But don't let that get you down. Just keep going and keep learning, and you'll get there. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question. And if you like this video, if you haven't subscribed already, subscribe to the channel. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.